They gave me 30 minutes. 30 minutes to decide whether to resign or be fired. After 21 years of service, after building their department from 3 people to 37, after weekends and holidays and family dinners missed because the team needs you, after 2 decades of loyalty, dedication, and results that had made them millions. 30 minutes. I'm Victoria Chen, and this is the story of how one carefully worded sentence in my resignation letter turned a humiliating termination into a $1.75 million payout that their lawyer is still trying to negotiate down. It was a Friday afternoon in March. I was 52 years old, vice president of operations at Meridian Technologies, a mid-sized software company in Austin, Texas. I'd started there when I was 31 as a project coordinator. I'd worked my way up through dedication, skill, and the kind of institutional knowledge that makes a company run smoothly even when everything else is chaos. I knew every system, every client relationship, every contract detail, every verbal agreement made before things were properly documented. I was the person people came to when they needed to know how we've always done it, or who knows about that old deal with the Chicago client. I thought that made me invaluable. I was wrong. It made me expensive. The new CFO, Derek Hartman, had been hired 6 months earlier. Young, ambitious, fresh from a consulting firm that specialized in corporate optimization, which is a fancy way of saying they cut costs by cutting people. He'd been systematically replacing senior staff with younger, cheaper employees. I'd watched it happen to 3 of my colleagues. I thought my results would protect me. I was wrong about that, too. Derek called me into the conference room at 4:30 p.m. on a Friday. HR Director Patricia Morrison was already there, along with my direct supervisor, James Chen, who couldn't meet my eyes. That's when I knew. "Victoria," Derek said, not even bothering with pleasantries, "we're restructuring operations. Your position is being eliminated. You have 2 options: resign with a severance package, or we terminate you for performance issues. You have 30 minutes to decide." I felt like I'd been punched in the stomach. Performance issues? My department exceeded targets every quarter for the past 3 years. We just closed the Barrett Industries deal that you specifically praised me for last month. "Your management style is outdated," Derek said smoothly. "We need someone more aligned with our new direction. The severance offer is generous, $11,000 and 3 months of health insurance continuation. If you choose termination instead, you get nothing and will be forced to document the performance issues in your file, which will affect your future employment prospects." $11,000? After 21 years? That was barely 2 months of my salary. "I need to see the severance agreement in writing," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. Patricia slid a document across the table. I read it carefully, lawyer-trained from years of reviewing contracts for the company. It was a standard separation agreement, with one crucial element. It required me to sign away all claims against the company in exchange for that insulting severance payment. 30 minutes, Derek repeated, checking his watch. "We need your decision before 5 p.m. They left me alone in that conference room. I think they expected me to cry, to panic, to sign quickly just to get out of there with some dignity intact. But I didn't panic. I got angry. And when I get angry, I get analytical. I pulled out my phone and photographed every page of the severance agreement. Then I opened the Notes app and started listing everything I knew about my employment contract. The contract I'd signed 21 years ago when the company was small and desperate for talent. The contract that had been renewed and updated over the years, but had retained certain original clauses because, if it's not broken, don't fix it. Specifically, one clause, Section 7.3, Change of Control Provisions. When I'd started at Meridian, the founders had offered key employees a special provision. If the company was sold or underwent significant ownership changes, and if those employees were terminated within 2 years of the change, they were entitled to a substantial payout. The formula was complex, but it essentially amounted to 2 years of salary plus bonuses, plus a percentage of the increase in company valuation. Most people had negotiated out of that clause over the years in exchange for raises or promotions. I'd kept it because my lawyer brother had advised me never to give up contractual protections without getting something substantial in return, and I'd never gotten an offer substantial enough to make it worth surrendering that clause. 18 months ago, Meridian had been acquired by a private equity firm. It was technically a purchase, not a merger, but it absolutely qualified as a change of control under my contract. I'd checked with my brother at the time. He'd confirmed that the clause was still active and that I was now protected for 2 years from the acquisition date, which meant I had 6 months left on that protection, and Derek had just triggered it by forcing me out. I did some quick math on my phone. 2 years of my current salary, $340,000. My bonuses over the past 3 years averaged $85,000 annually, so 2 years of average bonus, $170,000. The company valuation had increased from $47 million at acquisition to approximately $89 million now, based on the numbers I'd seen in last month's board report. My percentage was 0.5% of the increase, which was $210,000. Total, $720,000. But there was more. Section 7.3 also included a penalty clause for bad faith termination. If the company terminated a protected employee and attempted to circumvent the payout by forcing resignation, the penalties would double the total amount, $1.44 million. Plus legal fees if they fought it, estimated another $300,000 based on similar cases my brother had handled, $1.74 million. I sat in that conference room and smiled for the first time since Derek had said performance issues. They'd tried to scare me into resignation. They'd given me 30 minutes hoping I'd be too emotional to think clearly. They offered me $11,000 hoping I'd just take it and go away. They'd made a very expensive mistake. At 4:58 p.m., I walked into Derek's office with my decision. He looked up with that smug expression of someone who thinks he's won. "I'll resign," I said, "but I'm writing my own resignation letter." "That's fine," Derek said, relaxing. "Just make sure you sign the severance agreement." "I'll need a few days to think about the severance terms," I said, "but here's my resignation, effective immediately." I handed him the letter I'd typed on my phone and printed in the office. It was short, professional, and contained one very important sentence. "Dear Derek and Meridian Leadership, I hereby resign from my position as Vice President of Operations, effective immediately. Please consider this resignation as involuntary, executed under duress, and as a termination without cause under Section 7.3 of my employment agreement dated March 15, 2004, as amended. I will be in contact with my attorney regarding the appropriate severance calculations under the change of control provisions. Sincerely, Victoria Chen." I watched Derek's face as he read it. The smile faded, the color drained. He looked up at me with something approaching panic. "What is Section 7.3? He asked. "It's in my employment contract," I said calmly. "The one from 2004 that's still active. I'm sure HR has a copy. You'll want to read it carefully, especially the change of control provisions and the penalties for bad faith termination." I picked up my purse. "I'll be expecting contact from the company's legal team to discuss the payout calculations. Have a good weekend, Derek." I walked out of that building with my head high and my phone already dialing my brother. "Marcus," I said when he answered, "remember that contract clause you told me to keep? I just used it. Can you represent me?" "What happened?" he asked. "They tried to force me out with 30 minutes notice and an $11,000 severance. I triggered the change of control provision instead. I'm estimating they owe me around $1.7 million. Marcus whistled. Did you document the duress? I stated it clearly in my resignation letter, and I have witnesses to the 30-minute ultimatum. Derek and 2 others were in the room. Victoria, you brilliant woman. I'll have a demand letter ready by Monday. That was Friday. By Monday morning, Derek had apparently read my contract and consulted with the company's lawyers. My phone started ringing at 8:47 a.m. It was Samuel Richardson, Meridian's general counsel. Miss Chen, I'd like to discuss your resignation letter. You mean my involuntary termination letter, I corrected. I'm happy to discuss it, but only through my attorney, Marcus Chen at Chen & Associates. I'll have him contact you. Ms. Chen, I think there's been a misunderstanding. No misunderstanding. Section 7.3 is very clear. Change of control occurred 18 months ago. I was terminated within the 2-year protection period. Derek forced my resignation with a 30-minute ultimatum and threats to damage my professional reputation. That's textbook bad faith termination. The penalties are automatic. The company disputes that characterization. The company can dispute it in court if they'd like. My brother specializes in employment law, and he's very good at his job. I have documentation, witnesses, and a resignation letter that clearly states I was acting under duress. We both know how this ends. The only question is whether you want to pay $1.75 million now or $2.5 million after litigation. There was a long silence. I need to consult with the executive team. Take your time, I said. But just so you know, I've also filed a complaint with the EEOC regarding age discrimination. 52 years old, excellent performance reviews, replaced by a 29-year-old at half my salary. It's a pattern I've noticed with Derek's other optimizations. That might be relevant to your deliberations. I hung up. Samuel called back 6 more times that week. Each time, I referred him to Marcus. Each time, Marcus sent detailed breakdowns of the contract clauses, the penalty calculations, and the legal precedents that supported every element of our claim. By Friday, Derek called me directly. I let it go to voicemail. Victoria, this is Derek. I think we got off on the wrong foot. I'd like to discuss bringing you back in a consulting capacity. We're realizing there's some institutional knowledge we need and... I deleted it. He called again. Victoria, please call me back. We need to talk about this contract situation. I think there's room for negotiation. I deleted that one too. The third message was different. Ms. Chen, this is Derek Hartman. Our legal team would like to schedule a meeting to discuss settlement terms. Please have your attorney contact Samuel Richardson at his earliest convenience. That one I forwarded to Marcus. The settlement negotiations took 6 weeks. Meridian's lawyers tried everything. They claimed the change of control provision wasn't enforceable. Marcus showed them case law proving it was. They claimed I hadn't been terminated, I'd resigned voluntarily. Marcus showed them my letter stating it was under duress and the testimony we'd gathered from 2 other people Derek had forced out the same way. They claimed the penalty clause was punitive and unenforceable. Marcus explained that Texas law allowed contractual penalties for bad faith actions and that forcing a 30-minute resignation decision absolutely qualified. They offered $400,000. Marcus countered with $1.95 million, which included updated calculations now that they'd wasted 6 weeks in bad faith negotiations. They offered $750,000. Marcus didn't counter, just prepared to file suit. That's when the private equity firm that owned Meridian got involved. They realized that a public lawsuit about their new CFO systematically forcing out senior employees and trying to cheat them out of contractual protections would be very bad for their reputation and their ability to attract talent to their other portfolio companies. They also realized that Derek had never disclosed my contract clause when he'd proposed the optimization plan. He'd cost them what could have been a clean exit and turned it into a public relations nightmare and a massive payout. 3 days later, I got an email from a senior partner at the private equity firm. Ms. Chen, We'd like to resolve this matter quickly and professionally. Please provide your final settlement terms. Marcus and I sat in his office and calculated. The original amount? $1.74 million. Legal fees they'd caused? $85,000. The age discrimination claim I'd filed? Estimated settlement value of $200,000. Pain and suffering from the humiliation of being forced out? $150,000. Updated calculations now that it had been 2 months and they owed interest, another $47,000. Total? $2.22 million. But we knew they'd never pay that, so we settled on what we'd actually wanted from the beginning. $1.75 million, all legal fees paid separately, a neutral reference letter, and a mutual non-disparagement agreement that protected me from them bad-mouthing me to future employers. They accepted within 12 hours. The check cleared on a Wednesday in May, exactly 8 weeks after Derek had given me 30 minutes to resign. $1.75 million. After taxes, I'd net about $1.2 million. More money than I'd made in the previous 5 years combined. I paid Marcus his contingency fee. I paid off my mortgage. I put a substantial amount into retirement accounts. And then I did something I'd been thinking about for 21 years. I started my own consulting firm. Turns out, being a VP of operations for 21 years gives you a lot of knowledge about how companies actually run. Knowledge that newer, cheaper employees don't have. Knowledge that companies are willing to pay well for when they realize they've made a mistake. Within 3 months, I had 5 clients. Within 6 months, I was making more than I'd made at Meridian. And I was doing it on my own terms, with my own schedule, answering only to myself. But here's the part of the story that makes me smile every time I think about it. Derek's story. About 4 months after I left, I got a call from a former colleague still at Meridian. "Victoria, you need to hear this. Derek was fired." What happened? The private equity firm did an audit after your settlement. They found out Derek had been forcing out senior employees and replacing them with cheaper staff, but he'd been lying about the savings. He was counting the lower salaries as savings without accounting for the cost of mistakes the new people were making. Last quarter was a disaster. Clients were leaving because the new ops team didn't know what they were doing. The cost of the mistakes was more than the salary savings. And they fired him? Worse, they made him resign, gave him 30 minutes to decide, no severance package, just get out. The poetic justice of that made me laugh out loud. "There's more," my friend continued. "They've been calling former employees, trying to get them to come back as consultants. They've realized they gutted all the institutional knowledge. They're hemorrhaging clients because nobody knows the old relationships, the old deals, the history." "Have they called you?" 3 times. I told them my consulting rate is $500 an hour. "Good for you." "Victoria, they asked about you. They want to know if you'd consult for them." I thought about it for exactly 2 seconds. What's Samuel Richardson's direct line? I'll give them a quote. I called Samuel that afternoon. "Mr. Richardson, I understand Meridian is looking for operational consulting." "Miss Chen," he sounded tired. "Yes, we've had some transitions that have been more difficult than anticipated. I'm available for consulting work. My rate is $750 an hour, 4-hour minimum per session, and I require a 6-month contract paid in advance." There was a pause. "That's quite expensive." "That's the value of 21 years of institutional knowledge you tried to eliminate for $11,000. Take it or leave it." "I'll need to discuss with the executive team." "You have 30 minutes, I said, and hung up. They called back in 28 minutes. They accepted my terms. I consulted for Meridian for 6 months. I fixed most of the disasters Derek's optimization had created. I trained the new team on systems and relationships they didn't understand. I was professional, efficient, and expensive. I made an additional $340,000 in consulting fees from the same company that tried to pay me $11,000 to disappear quietly.
And through it all, Samuel Richardson never missed an opportunity to complain to me about how expensive this whole situation had become for the company. "If we just handled your departure differently," he said once, "this would have cost us nothing but normal severance. If you'd handled my departure with respect," I corrected, "it would have cost you a fair severance package and you'd have retained my goodwill and potentially my consulting services at reasonable rates. Instead, Derek thought he could bully me out the door and save the company money. He was wrong. Expensive lesson." Samuel didn't disagree. Here's what I learned from this experience. Documentation matters, contracts matter, and never, ever give up contractual protections unless you're getting something substantial in return. That clause I'd kept for 21 years, the one my brother told me to protect, had seemed like overkill at the time. Who gets terminated after 2 decades of loyal service? Who needs protection from their own company? Turns out, I did. And because I'd protected that clause, because I'd read my contract thoroughly, because I'd kept every performance review and every email praising my work, because I remained calm when they tried to panic me into resignation, I turned their attempt to humiliate me into the best payday of my career. The other lesson? Companies don't value loyalty anymore. They value cost efficiency. And the minute you become expensive, you become expendable, no matter how long you've been there or how good you are at your job. Derek thought he was optimizing the company by replacing expensive senior employees with cheaper ones. What he was actually doing was destroying institutional knowledge, damaging client relationships, and creating a cascade of problems that cost far more than the salary savings. And when they tried to quietly force me out to avoid paying what I was contractually owed, they turned a manageable exit into a $1.75 million lesson in why you should always honor your contracts and treat people with respect. My name is Victoria Chen. I gave a company 21 years of my life, building their operations department from nothing into something that made them millions. They thanked me by giving me 30 minutes to resign or be fired. I wrote one sentence in my resignation letter that referenced a contract clause they'd forgotten existed. That sentence cost them $1.75 million, destroyed their CFO's career, and turned me into an independent consultant making more money than I ever made as their employee. People ask me if I'm bitter, if I resent the 21 years I wasted at Meridian. I'm not bitter. I'm grateful. Those 21 years taught me everything I needed to know to run my own business. They gave me skills, knowledge, relationships, and experience that I now monetize on my own terms. And they taught me the most valuable lesson of all. Always read your contract, always protect your rights, and never let someone bully you into giving up what you're legally owed. Derek thought he could give me 30 minutes and I'd crumble. He thought wrong. I took those 30 minutes and turned them into the best decision of my professional life. Their lawyer still calls occasionally, usually when Meridian has another crisis they need help with. My consulting rate has gone up to $900 an hour. Supply and demand. And every time Samuel Richardson's name appears on my caller ID, I smile and remember, respect costs nothing. Disrespect cost them $1.75 million. Best 30 minutes I ever spent.